Standard data meetings often follow a predictable pattern. Teams review printouts of summative test scores, identify a broad area of weakness, and agree to reteach the concept the following week. This approach is reactive, relying on data that arrives after the learning unit has already concluded. A focus collaboration team, or FCT, is designed to shift that timeline. The goal is to identify specific learning barriers and adjust instruction while the unit is still in progress. This 18-week, 6-phase rollout functions as a structured sequence to build internal teacher expertise. It focuses on developing the specific capabilities teams need to manage their own instructional cycles. The implementation architecture follows a deliberate path. Teams establish shared language before interpreting evidence and classify students before designing targeted responses. This progression occurs within existing FCT meetings rather than adding parallel structures. However, it requires a shift in the administrative role. Leaders must actively engage with the process. This involves modeling standard translation, calibrating how evidence is interpreted across departments, providing coaching, and monitoring the fidelity of the rollout. Collaborative efficacy is built layer by layer. By following a structured semester-long plan, leadership can move teams from baseline compliance to independent instructional adjustment. Phase 1 occupies weeks 1 through 3. This phase establishes the foundational vocabulary of the entire rollout by defining exactly what mastery looks like for a given standard. Vague standards or activity descriptions often lead to inconsistent expectations. If a team cannot agree on what a student must produce to prove mastery, they cannot accurately discuss student progress. In the small group rewriting lab, teams convert priority standards into observable skill statements. This requires a specific linguistic shift. Instead of a broad goal like students understand theme, teams write a measurable target, such as students justify theme using textual evidence in a written explanation. Success in Phase 1 is measured by the content of team agendas. By week 3, at least 80% of FCT discussions should be anchored by these skill-level mastery statements. Establishing this shared vocabulary is the prerequisite for the next phase, interpreting student work. Phase 2, covering weeks 4 through 6, replaces score-based thinking with indicator-based interpretation. Teachers evaluate student work against 4 qualitative indicators: concept accuracy, strategy selection, explanation clarity, and transferability. Using these indicators, teams sort anonymized student work into below, on-trend, and advanced, moving the conversation towards specific evidence of understanding. In Phase 3, spanning weeks 7 through 9, teams focus on trend placement reliability. A single assessment score does not provide enough data to accurately classify a student's long-term capability. Instead, teachers look for patterns across multiple data points, including work samples, exit tickets, and formative checks, to identify a reliable trend. Leadership facilitates this by running calibration simulations, where teams must defend their placement decisions using actual student evidence. When disagreements arise, they must be resolved by returning to the indicator matrix. This ensures that classification remains based on observable evidence rather than subjective impressions. This process ensures cross-classroom consistency.
A student classified as below in one room receives the same classification and support as they would in another. Phase 4 covers weeks 10 through 12. This phase addresses the common practice of applying the same instructional response to every student who struggles. Simply repeating a lesson, the reteach loop, often fails to address why the student struggled in the first place. Leadership introduces a barrier taxonomy to diagnose specific hurdles. Anticipated hurdles are addressed through differentiation, building scaffolds directly into initial lesson design. But persistent misconceptions require intervention. A targeted, structured response applies after initial instruction fails, specifically chosen to address the identified barrier. Teachers practice this by sorting student scenarios into these categories, ensuring they can match the right instructional scaffold to the right barrier. By identifying the specific why behind a student's struggle, teams move from reactive repetition to targeted instructional precision. In Phase 5, weeks 13 through 15, these instructional responses are documented as repeatable cycles inside FCT meetings.
Teams use the Plan, Do, Study, Act, or PDSA framework. This provides a shared structure for tracking whether a specific scaffold actually moved the needle on student evidence. A PDSA entry identifies the barrier, names the specific scaffold used, records the change in student evidence, and states the next instructional decision. Phase 6, covering weeks 16 through 18, ensures the system also addresses the needs of advanced learners. The objective for extension is to increase cognitive demand. This involves requiring students to justify their reasoning with more precision, compare multiple solution strategies, or apply their skills in entirely new contexts. During task redesign workshops, teams transform basic early finisher activities into transfer challenges that require deeper reasoning. Documenting these intervention and extension cycles within the FCT meetings is what allows the system to remain effective long after the initial rollout concludes. To sustain this, leadership must adapt their coaching to each team's maturity level. Beginning teams require direct support with pre-built templates and co-facilitation. Progressing teams focus on diagnostic skills like barrier mapping and Tier 1 scaffold selection. Advanced teams move toward vertical alignment and complex transfer task design for extension. By meeting teams at their actual level of readiness, leaders can provide the specific support needed for continuous growth. At the end of 18 weeks, the goal is a fully operational FCT ecosystem where data drives real-time instructional change. Leaders monitor this ecosystem through a dashboard tracking fidelity across 6 domains, from mastery targets to PDSA cycles. Data is pulled directly from existing artifacts, like agendas and logs, allowing monitoring without creating compliance burdens. The success of the rollout depends on the sequence. Shared language must be established before interpreting evidence, and student classification must occur before intervention planning. Because each phase creates the foundation for the next, following the full sequence is necessary to reach the final end-state targets. By following this architecture, leaders provide teams with the technical tools to identify specific learning barriers and adjust instruction while the unit is in progress.